And welcome to another edition of our treatment of the International Sunday School lesson. Today's lesson is entitled Revealed Love, and it's taken from Genesis, the 45th chapter, verses 1 through 8, and then jumping up to verses 10 through 15. And it's for September the 27th, 2020, fall quarter lesson number 3. Now, a little background information. There have been a good number of events that have occurred between last week's lesson and this week's lesson. We're in our second year of the famine that was taking over and afflicting the Near East. And the Israelites, Joseph's brothers and father, they had ran out of the food that they had purchased in Egypt. So Jacob comes to his sons and asks his sons to go back down into Egypt to buy some more food. And the brothers tell Jacob that the ruler down there had demanded that Benjamin go down with them, because you remember from last week, Benjamin did not go down to Egypt. And Jacob said, "Oh no, you cannot take Benjamin down there. It would break my heart if anything happened to Benjamin. His brother Joseph has been taken from me. So please, you cannot take Benjamin down there." So Judah gives a strong argument to his father about letting him take his littlest brother Benjamin down to Egypt. Judah says that he's going to put up his own child as surety for Benjamin's safety. So Judah has completely had a change of heart from the time that he sold his brother into slavery all those years ago. So Jacob allows Benjamin to go with his brothers down into Egypt. They enter into Egypt. They make the transaction, and Joseph, and probably as a plot to get his brother Benjamin to stay down there with him, Joseph has his own personal cup and the money returned and put into the sacks of the brothers. And he takes his own personal cup and makes sure that that was put in the sack of Benjamin's. So they get to go out a little farther from Egypt, and Joseph sends his forces out and accuses the brothers of stealing. And they begin to search through the sacks. Of course, the officials knew that Benjamin had the cup. They find the cup in Benjamin's sack. And they arrest Benjamin, and all the brothers come back to stand before Joseph. And as this is beginning to unfold, the brothers begin to demonstrate to Joseph how they are completely different people at this point, and how they were deeply concerned about the welfare of Benjamin. And that is what has brought us up to this point in today's lesson in the Scripture. Genesis 45, 1 and 2. Then Joseph could no longer control himself before all of his attendants, and he cried out, "Have everyone leave my presence." So there was no one with Joseph when he made himself known to his brothers. And he wept so loudly that the Egyptians heard him, and Pharaoh's household heard about it. So we see here that it begins to dawn on Joseph how that his brothers had this change of heart. They were different people than those brothers that sold him into slavery all those years ago. And he has this well of compassion builds up in him. And he is so emotional. And it has brought such extreme yearning and love and compassion and grief and hurt feelings and everything that has been bottled up in righteous Joseph all of these years. And he does not want to break down in front of the Egyptians, because he is the second person in line to control the country. And he doesn't want to give any indication of any type of weakness or anything like that. So Joseph has all of the Egyptians leave his presence, where he doesn't demonstrate these well of compassion, this well of emotion, this family love inside of him. And he has them all leave from the room. But he is so emotional that they can hear him throughout the house. Joseph is heartbroken, and he is having tears of joy and heartbreak and healing, and all of this is building up in him. He's feeling all of these different types of emotion. If you've ever had a huge rift in your family and the healing begins to take place and people begin to cry and weep and lay on each other's shoulders, there's so many different levels and flavors of what's being felt. So oftentimes you can't tell whether it's more joy than sorrow, because all these bent up and pent up emotions are coming forward during this time frame. And that's what was happening to Joseph. The third verse, Joseph said to his brothers, I am Joseph. Is my father still living? But his brothers were not able to answer him because they were terrified at his presence. Now let your mind wander just a little bit and think about what those brothers must have been thinking. Here is this brother that they had contemplated killing, and just as a token of mercy, had sold him into slavery, and no one had been down there to check up on their brother. They sold him into slavery and forgot about him. And then they find out that he has become the second person in command in Egypt. That would have made him the second most powerful man on the face of the planet. This is the man that they sold into slavery when he was a young boy of about 17 years old. This is the one that they had lied to their daddy about and said he was dead. This is the one that they took the money, the price of a slave, blew it, spent it, and didn't think any more about that brother. And there they stood in front of him, knowing full and well that all he had to do to have them killed is to say the word. And it would have been over for them. He could have had them all killed. So they were terrified. Now there's a little bit of a puzzling question in here that Joseph asked them. And you can tell he still doesn't fully trust his brothers when he asks, is my father still living? See, Joseph didn't know, and it's real obvious by that question. Joseph did not know how truthful his brothers were. And they had told, well, our father is still alive and he's still up in Canaan. But Joseph wasn't really sure he could trust what they said. They may have just been talking, being polite, not trying to show any type of weakness down into Egypt. So Joseph was not 100% sure that they were being honest with him when they said that their father was still alive. So he asked them again, after they know who he is my father still living? And under that thought of trust, how much trust Joseph would have toward his brothers and what they had already told him, the question makes sense in that context. Okay? Genesis 45, 4 and 5. Then Joseph said to his brothers, "Come close to me." When they had done so, he said, "I am your brother Joseph, the one you sold into Egypt. And now, do not be distressed, and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you." So Joseph he's thought through this. And it has dawned on him that this famine was going to come regardless. And this was God's way of making deliverance for him and his entire family. Now, true, Joseph had to go through a good bit of hardship to get to this point. But the plan was obvious at this moment. Now, I have often said, and I keep reminding myself of this fact, that when you are at the bottom of the well and all your brothers have turned their back on you and betrayed you, you don't see the throne in Egypt that's ahead. And oftentimes, when we go through various things and we're working our way through the pain, we do not see the good things that are going to come out of it. And the important thing that we need to do is to keep pressing on, to keep holding on, keep believing God, keep pressing on to the mark of the high calling that's in Christ Jesus, to keep preaching the gospel at every opportunity, to keep living a good word of testimony in front of a lost and dying world every step, every chance that we have. To be faithful to God every day of our life, regardless what we're going through, because we don't see a lot of the good things that come out of these hardships and troubles that we're going through. And as Joseph was down in the bottom of that well, he didn't see how this was going to work out. But as he stood there, second in command in Egypt, being able to save his family because he's in that position of power. Looking back over his life, he sees the hand of God in all of it. And he cuts his brothers slack. And that's what we need to do at every opportunity, to cut people slack. Don't be bent on getting even and hurting people. Let things go. Just like the song in that movie. Let it go. Okay? Now, 45, 6, and 7. For 2 years now there has been a famine in the land, and for the next 5 years there will be no plowing and reaping. But God sent me ahead of you to preserve you a remnant on earth and to save your lives by a great deliverance. So here he is reiterating it. There had been 2 years of that famine, as we said in the background remarks. There was going to be 5 more years of famine. Now 5 more years of famine will do people in. Huge amount of death in 5 years of famine without any kind of relief. But fortunately, God had a plan, and Joseph was in that position to save his family during that 5 years. 45 and 8. So then, it was not you who sent me here, but God. He made me father to Pharaoh, lord of his entire household, and a ruler of all Egypt. The story of Joseph is just an amazing, awesome story. How that Joseph had went down into Egypt and became the second in command of Egypt. He was the second most powerful person on the face of the earth. And by all indications of what Joseph just said, here, Pharaoh backed off and gave Joseph pretty much, a free hand of whatever he decided to do, he could do. That's what it means when he says that he made me father to Pharaoh. Joseph was functioning as an advisor to Pharaoh. And of course, now Pharaoh could have overruled Joseph, but because of the respect that Pharaoh had for Joseph, he wouldn't, and he didn't. Okay, jumping down to the 10th verse, 45, 10, and 11. You shall live in the region of Goshen and be near me. You, your children, and your grandchildren, your flocks, your herds, and all you have. I will provide for you there, because 5 years of famine are still to come. Otherwise, you and your household and all who belong to you will become destitute. So in other words, what Joseph is saying here, he's going to give them a place right next to him where they can come and have their needs supplied. And that is the land of Goshen. Okay, Genesis 45, 12, and 13. You can see for yourselves, and so can my brother Benjamin, that it is really I who am speaking to you. Tell my father about all the honor accorded me in Egypt, and about everything you have seen, and bring my father down here quickly. And we see here how Joseph wants his daddy to come down. He wants everybody taken care of. Now, Genesis 45, 14 through 15. Then he threw his arms around his brother Benjamin and wept. And Benjamin embraced him, weeping. And he kissed all his brothers and wept over them. Afterwards, his brothers talked with him. So we see here that there's a big healing in their family. Now, concluding thoughts, just one big concluding thought. Let things go. If you got trouble in your family, just let it go and just let things be healed in your family. Well, friends, good Lord willing, I'll be back with you next weekend. And welcome to another edition